All right, what's up, everybody? I'm back with another video. I just did some research real quick. I'm just kind of doing an update to an older video, which I was looking at for-profit prisons, but I was also wondering, what the effect of imprisonment has had on fathers specifically and children. So we're going to look at some data here, and then we're going to look at how I think this issue could apply to an America First type agenda, because there is some corruption contained within the answer to the question, why did the U.S. prison population grow 700% in 40 years? We're going to get into it and look now. Now, I'm definitely, as a libertarian ANCAP type of person, I am definitely against violent criminals being released from prison. In fact, I think that violent criminals should get very severe punishments, including for R-ing people, murder, and all of those type of crimes, especially anything involving minors or adults or attacking minors, and just anyone who's violently attacking anyone in any way, shape, or form. That should be the most, extreme punishments. And then going from there, depending on the crime, how a person could be rehabilitated or not is up to the, courts. Okay, so that's basically my position on crime. Since I'm libertarian ANCAP, I'm definitely against the concept of victimless crimes, except in some extreme moral circumstances. I wouldn't even be able to list them now, but I'm sure someone can come up with some type of extreme moral circumstance where it would be improper to do something even though there is not a victim. So, okay, so first I looked at this article here, which is America's Incarceration Crossroads, Reversing Progress Amid Record Low Crime Rates. So this article is kind of saying that crime rates are low, but the number of people imprisoned is not going down as fast. So basically, I saw this part where it said between 1972 and 2009, the number of people in prison grew nearly 700%. So then I just went over to Grok, and I just asked Grok, why did this happen? Why did this happen between 1972 in the US? I just cut and paste that and just said, why did this happen? So here it says, the massive surge in the US incarceration, jumping from about 300,000 people behind bars in 1972 to over 2.3 million by 2009. Oh yeah, and that first article, they also pointed out that the United States has the most percentage of incarcerated people of any country in the world, right? Okay, so the 2.3 million people wasn't due to a sudden crime wave. Crime actually peaked in the early 90s and then dropped. Instead, it was driven by deliberate policy choices from politicians across both parties, fueled by tough-on-crime politics, racial biases, and the war on drugs. This era, often called mass incarceration, hit communities of color hardest, turning the U.S. into the world's top jailer, despite stable or declining crime rates in many areas. Right? So then basically the main driver of all of the incarceration is this war on drugs thing, where you can see drug arrests tripled, went from 16% of federal prisoners in 1970 to 50% in 2009. Now, drug offenders, if they're selling or buying, it's different, and you don't know how much they had, so it's this is not really the best way to look at this, but just in general, the fact that it's dealing with just that And yes, it could be dealing with like heroin or other drugs that are narcotics that are actually deadly. So we don't really know what the number is here, but we can see that a lot of people it increased, and it's like people are paying taxes to imprison all of these people, and they're basically just doing a voluntary business transaction. Now with heroin and other narcotics, I do believe that is not a good categorization, because something that when you're addicted to it in a way that you cannot stop or you will actually die, I think that's not the same as like alcohol and coffee and weed and stuff like that. It's just not. Okay. So then also the 3 strikes law, and then convictions for drugs rose 350%, and then to 50 to 100% for all other crimes. Right? The share of people sent to prison jumped almost 50%. They're giving people longer sentences, economic biases. And then arrest for minor offenses. Okay, but what they're not talking about in this article are 2 things, and I think these 2 things are kind of covering, the main topics that I cover on this channel, male-focused issues, and also kind of moving into this America First anti-corruption type of vein of things. So the first article we're going to look at here is from the National Fatherhood Initiative, and it's showing the latest data on incarcerated dads and their children. All right. So we can see that there's 684,500 prisoners that have at least one minor child. So the total children of all the incarcerated people is 1.5 million. So there's 1.5 million children that are missing at least one parent due to their being in prison. And even though, this is interesting because this is like some feminist stuff here, where it says a higher proportion of incarcerated women, 58%, than incarcerated men, 47%, were parents. But what the report didn't mention, however, is that the vast majority of parents in prison are dads. Why didn't they mention that? Who knows? I can tell you, feminism. The data in the report make it easy to calculate that 91.6% of incarcerated parents are dads. So nearly almost all of the parents in jail are fathers. And then they can calculate that, where it's 77% of the 1.5 million children. So about 77% of 1.5 million children. I think it would be about maybe like 900,000. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of guessing real quick. But, slightly less than that. 30% less than that. All right. So basically around, close enough to 1 million children's father is in jail. Okay. So now when we look at what the cause of the increase in people being incarcerated, we can see that there is actually some corruption going on. Now, this is an older article that I got. You can watch my old video. It has a bunch of links in it to different websites about the drug stats, the for-profit prison thing. I made this video like 8 years ago now. So, all right, so we're going to look at this. Kids for Cash judge sentenced to 28 years for racketeering scheme. Pennsylvania judge was sentenced Thursday for his part in what prosecutors called a kids for cash scheme that sent juvenile offenders to privately run detention facilities in return for kickbacks. Right? And this is happening all over the place. Everywhere where not everywhere where they're building private prisons, but the fact that they're building private prisons is kind of, I think that's like, we'll see. Like, look at it. There's too much of an incentive. A former juvenile court judge in Pennsylvania was sentenced to 28 years in prison on Thursday for his part in an alleged kids for cash scam considered one of the worst judicial scandals in U.S. history. Mark Ciavarella Jr., 61, a former judge in Luzerne County, was also ordered to pay $1.17 million in restitution. Mr. Ciavarella was convicted in federal court in Scranton, Pennsylvania in February on charges that he and a second judge, Michael Conahan, ran the court system as a racketeering enterprise. The federal indictment says the two judges accepted $2.8 million in kickbacks from the owner and builder of two privately run juvenile detention facilities. In exchange, the judge agreed to close down the county's own juvenile detention center, which could have competed with the new privately run facilities. In addition, they guaranteed that juvenile offenders from their court would be directed to the privately run facilities. Right? The judges. So they're convicting people on purpose or giving them longer sentences in exchange for millions of dollars in kickbacks. Basically, each one of these guys got $1.4 million to send kids to jail for like minor offenses for like a super long time so that they could profit off of the labor and whatever, however else the jails profit from keeping people in jail. In comments to the court, Ciavarella apologized to the community and to the children whose cases he had adjudicated. I blame no one but myself for what happened, he said, according to the Associated Press. But the former judge rejected claims that he engaged in kids for cash racketeering scheme. He said prosecutors used the claim to sabotage his reputation prior to his trial. Those three words made me the personification of evil, he told the court. According to the Associated Press, they made me toxic and caused a public uproar, the likes of which this community has never seen. Ciavarella had a reputation as a no-nonsense jurist who would not hesitate to sentence young, first-time offenders to juvenile detention. He also gained a reputation as a judge prone to cut constitutional corners. An investigation revealed that half of the children who appeared in his courtroom were not represented by a lawyer and were never advised of their right to counsel. Of those unrepresented children, up to 60% were ordered by Ciavarella to serve time at a detention facility. What was not known prior to the federal investigations was that Ciavarella and Conahan were receiving secret payments from the private detention centers. The centers stood to profit from the higher number of juveniles they were housing. Amid mounting questions about Ciavarella's actions as a juvenile judge, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in 2009 directed that all adjudications involving children appearing before Ciavarella from 2003 to 2008 be vacated and their records expunged. The directive is estimated to involve 4,000 cases. That means they sent 4,000 kids to jail for no reason other than for them to make $1.4 million each. Possibly ruining their entire lives or whatever, right? For cash. See, A 16-year-old arrested for gesturing with her middle finger at a police officer was sent to juvenile hall. Come on. Honor roll student, a Girl Scout who attended Bible school and had no prior arrest record. Come on, man. She was told she wouldn't need a lawyer. This is nuts, right? So you can see what's happening here, right? And they're building private prisons everywhere. Let's ask Rock, right? $158. So it's about 8% of the total population. About 90,000 to 100,000 people. Okay. Texas has a lot. Florida, California. Okay. So see, it's not a huge thing, but it's definitely a scam. Okay. Oh, whoops. Okay. Wait, I thought they were private. Wait, I thought it was a private prison. Okay, so a private prison, the government pays them a fixed amount per prisoner per day. About $60 to $200 per person per day. So, an 1,000-bed prison cost about $1 million per year. Many contracts require the state to keep the prison 80 to 100% full. Why do these guys get guaranteed contracts for work? If the prison is only 70% full, but the contract says 90, the state still pays for the missing 20%. Oh man, I got into the wrong business. Wrong business. ICE pays even higher rates, 200 to 300 per day for migrant detention centers. This became the fastest growing part after 2016 and again in 2025. Okay, so they made 800 million from ICE contracts from the government, right? They're getting paid tax money. Okay. Okay, selling ankle monitors to halfway houses, that's okay. Yeah, so they still get paid whether or not there's prisoners in there or not. Interesting. So I think looking at that and then looking at kind of like, if we look at how many people are in prison for these drug related and other minor offenses, definitely child support and things like that. Let's see how many people are in jail for child support. You know, and possibly get some of these like dads back if they're not like, you know, violent offenders or anything like that, if they're just in jail for something stupid. So there's about 50,000 people in jail for child support, and again, 95% men. You see, it's like the hypergamy just creeps in because obviously there's no gendered law, but it just keeps happening to be that men are always the ones that are paying, even though there's no gendered law. I wonder why that's happening. I wonder why men are always the one that end up paying. Oh, so the total parents with active child support orders who are incarcerated is actually 300 to 350,000. About 1/5 to 1/4 of the 2.3 million people incarcerated. So you see that? Almost a quarter, 1/5 to 1/4 of the people that are incarcerated are parents that owe child support. What is the point of that? You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying release some like violent guy. I'm saying what is the point of a father, because it's 95% men, a father being in jail? Right. And then it's like, again, you're paying taxes. You're paying taxes 1/5 to 1/4 of the taxes that you're paying for these jails is to incarcerate parents with child support orders. See that? Like that's a non-violent offense, you know? And okay, let's see. Okay. Our no, traditional debtors' prisons where people are jailed solely for failing to pay private debts, right? Like credit cards or loans, okay, are illegal in the United States. They were abolished federally in 1833 under the Bankruptcy Act, and all states followed suit by the mid-19th century, banning imprisonment for the inability to pay civil debts. This is rooted in constitutional protections, including the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, which the Supreme Court reinforced in cases like Williams v. Illinois 1970 and Bearden v. Georgia 1983. Courts cannot jail someone just for being poor. Any incarceration must be for willful noncompliance, not merely inability to pay. However, modern debtors' prisons persist in a legal gray area for court-imposed debts, fines, fees, restitution, or child support from criminal or civil cases. Critics, including the ACLU and DOJ, call these practices unconstitutional because they disproportionately jail low-income people, often without an ability to pay hearing, creating a cycle of poverty and incarceration. As of 2025, this affects hundreds of thousands annually, most in state and local courts, despite ongoing reforms. So you can see, again, that it is unconstitutional, like I said in the other video, to put people in jail for debt. Then you put the person in jail for debt, and then you have to pay tax money to keep all these people in jail. See? Who pays? Let's go back up to this one. How do private prisons make money? The government pays them a fixed amount per prisoner per day. right? And that's the same way that all prisons make money, right? And then so you pay the tax for 300,000 to 350,000 men, about 1/5 of the prison, to be held there unconstitutionally. Okay. I don't see anybody in the chat saying I'm wrong. All right. Well, I'm about to get out of here, do some more research, put on Alex Jones in the background, get all my other work done around here. So, have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.